There. And I am going to share my screen. And we will get started. So today, we're going to talk about a few different things, really just a couple. One thing that we're going to talk about today is this video right here. We're just going to start with this and get it done and talk about a mindset training that I think is extremely important. Here we go.
Hi, this is Don Tennyson with your weekly Ninja Action Tip. One of the 4 key principles of Ninja selling is this concept of personal.
Leave it up so they can hear it on this, please.
We talk about a lot in Ninja, and we read Mastery, and we recommend you do that on a daily basis. And one of the things I think it's important to remember with Mastery is this concept that says, if I want my business to get better, then I have to get better. And I think a lot of times we want other things to get better. We want the market to improve, or we want interest rates to go down, or we want more phone calls coming into our business. We want more referrals, something like that. And we fail to recognize that while all that's important, the real key thing to getting better is if I make a commitment to get better myself. One of the key ways to do that is practice, of course. And so one of the action tip items for this week would be, why don't we see if we can take 30 minutes sometime this week to practice with one of your colleagues one of the key concepts of Ninja selling. Because if I want my business to get better, then I have to get better. How about another thing to think about? And that is, maybe you could take a book out of the top 10 list from the Ninja selling workbook and start reading a book that will help you improve and get better. Maybe there are some things online that we can look at or that we can read that will help us to improve. And that way, we don't wait for our circumstances to change. We take proactive action so that we can get better. So that's your weekly action tip for this week. We'll see you soon on the Ninja Path.
So I don't think I've seen a Ninja action tip hit so hard, so fast before. That tip has so much in it, and it's timely because I've been talking with multiple agents lately about their daily habits. And I'll tell you, if you aren't making the income in real estate that you want to be making, but you aren't doing your daily habits, hope is your strategy. And hope is not a strategy. It just isn't. We've got talking going on in Fayetteville, and I can't hear what was said, but it sounded important. Maybe not. Okay. Hope is not a strategy. When I sent out the link yesterday morning to the Monday morning agenda, who uses that Monday morning agenda? 2, 3. That Monday morning agenda is gold. It's gold. You look back on what you did last week. You decide if those things were keeping you on track or not, and then you make your plan for this week so that you are treating your business like a business. The other thing that we've been talking a lot about with different agents as we get together. Well, I lost Fayetteville. It's turning into a fun morning here. Well, it's being recorded, so we're going to continue. The other thing that I've been talking with a lot of agents about, instead of just the daily activity, is now I've lost track.
Life goals.
We did Monday morning agenda, daily activity, looking back, looking forward. This is why you do notes for a meeting instead of wing it.
Practice on your 8.
I had it.
Is this being recorded?
Yes, it's being recorded. And the more you talk, the less I think about what I'm supposed to say. Is auto flow. So auto flow is something that you're invested in. It's something that costs you money. However, the return on the auto flow is just hands down, without a doubt, incredible. When I did that first 8 and 8 that I ever did, 50 households brought me over $70,000. I don't know what more testimony you guys need for that. If you haven't done an 8 and 8, those were on people that I hadn't stayed in touch with. That was to rejuvenate them in my database because I hadn't stayed in touch with them and I liked them. It's just a large database. If you are not doing auto flow to those people at minimum, and even better, an 8 and 8, you're really missing out. You're really missing out. And remember, don't get hung up on what's being sent to them, other than your handwritten note and other than your phone call and your face-to-face with the real estate review. Don't get hung up on that, because the old marketing director we had sent the same postcard out 4 times for me on accident. It's how it happened. And they were like, I just took it as a sign from God. It was time to call you. Great. Great. Eric chimed in about doing the real estate reviews and how important that was for his business. The real estate reviews set you up as an expert for your sphere. If you're not doing real estate reviews, you're begging for business and not providing anything of value. That's what you're doing. And I obviously want to help people that help me. You obviously want to help people that help you. They want to help people that help them. So if you help them with a real estate review, show them what's possible with that equity, show them that their rate is too high and they need to finance, show them that their insurance is too low and they're at risk if something were to happen. This is going to build value for you with your clients. It's going to position you as the expert. I love telling people that my mom saved over 70 grand when I did a real estate review for her. And if you were the one that would have done that for her, you'd be the one that she refers, even though I'm her son. I'd still be invited to Thanksgiving, but you'd be the expert because you saved her all that money. So if you're not taking time to do the activities, don't be surprised at the outcome. If you're taking the time to do the activities and in 45 to 90 days, you're not getting the outcome, we need to talk, because something's messed up in there and we need to fix it, and you need some coaching on the how to instead of the do. But if you're not doing the do, as they say, if you're not doing the activity, don't be surprised at your results. Hope is not a strategy. It's just not. So with that in mind, we're going to move from talking about real estate reviews and doing those daily activities to values. And we've got Howard the appraiser with us, and I'm going to do a quick rundown on how I find quick values for a real estate review, quick values for working with a buyer who's about to drop an offer and wants to know what's going on in the neighborhood, and how to research for a listing. I'm going to do one of the easiest ones to do. I'm not going to jump in and do a 4,300 square foot house on 12 acres. I'm not going to do that today. We're just going to do a neighborhood home that is easy to figure out. So first thing that we'll do is probably jump into tax records. So I'll jump into tax records and I'll check on the owner's name. So let's say Austin. And I'll pull up the information on the home. So this one, we're going to click on improvements, and we're going to see that the tax records have it in as 1652 square feet. I know that's not correct because I measured this house. If you don't know how to measure a house, don't measure a house. That's not a good idea. You don't want the, you don't want to assume responsibility for things you don't know how to do. And it's hard to do. So,
Let me say something.
yeah.
Do you guys know what ANSI standards is?
no,
So ANSI standards is the standard for measuring houses, and it's becoming a Fannie Mae guideline starting next month.
okay,
We will already follow that, but it's actually been adopted by realtors. I mean, National Board of Realtors and all that stuff. So
how do you spell that?
ANSI, ANSI does a lot of standards. ANSI, house measuring, and you'll see measuring square footage, yes.
There we go.
There's a bunch of-
You'll have to let me know how it goes if it's
I
if
will.
it's everything you want it to be.
I don't know who's having another conversation there. There we go. So I'll leave this pulled up and I'll send a link out after the meeting for you guys to understand what Howard's talking about here with measuring. But for now, I'm going to go with the county records. And I'm going to say that we're going to look at homes in Garrett Road subdivision in Rogers. So I'll look at residential. And I'm going to look at active, pending, and sold in Rogers and Garrett subdivision. That gives me 4 matches. That's plenty. Let's see what's going on with them. This is actually a lot closer to the size of the house, these two. So we're going to keep these. We have 1 pending. We have 3 sold. And if we want to look at this, we'll see that they were all built in 2011, 2012, and 2013. The house in question, the one that we're looking at, the subject house, was built in 2014. So it's a little bit newer than the others. The reason it's a little newer, it was the last house to be built because it's at the entrance of the neighborhood. And that's actually a little bit less desirable because they get all the traffic and the side traffic. But I'm going to check those. And then I'm going to go here and check it stats. And on sold, we've got 176 to 189 a square foot. Our average and median are really close. This neighborhood's actually fairly stable in value. So I'll probably go to those people with a mind of you're probably worth about $183 a square foot. Of course, they're going to say, no, we're $190 a square foot. And in this market, it's quite possible they'd get it. Will it appraise for that? Not without evidence. Not without evidence. So if we go in and say, well, for that price, we'll need an appraisal gap covered on the contract, then the seller knows what they're looking for and what they're up against. So that's just the easy, quick method of saying, let's check values. Let's see if any of this supports anything that we're doing. But an appraiser goes much deeper than that and does a lot more than that. When we sit down with a seller to go through this, of course, we're going to look through the photos. We're going to ask them how their home compares to this home. If their home has things that this home doesn't. Are your floors as nice as those floors? Are your countertops as nice as those countertops? Do you like your layout as much as this layout? Is your trim as nice as this trim? For saleability, are all of your light bulbs working? Do you have a pantry? Is your carpet nice and clean like this carpet? Do you have a separate tub and shower? Do you have a walk-in closet? Do you have a covered patio? Or is it just covered? Is your yard fenced? All of these things are things in comparing properties that create value for a buyer and create profit or less profit for a seller. Are you including the washer, dryer, and refrigerator? Even though that's not considered real estate, does that create value in a buyer's mind? Absolutely. It adds to the saleability. If we look at a different house here, how's your landscaping compared to that one? That's not permanent coverage really, but is it covered? Because people like that. It's going to help in the saleability. Is your living room carpeted or is it wood floor? Is it an open floor plan like this one? Is the kitchen completely open to the living room? Good things to compare. Is your stove gas or electric? Do you have a pantry? Is it this clean? It keeps you from saying the things like, well, you really need to clean your house. It really needs to be organized, because when you go through these and you see their master bedroom closet doesn't have a pile in the middle of the floor, you can ask them, is your closet as organized as this one? And it keeps you from being the offensive and puts that off on them. So as we go through these, who remembers from Ninja, who prices the property?
The seller.
The seller. Yeah. And if they pick a price that's outrageous and doesn't make any sense at all, and they want to sell their house that's 1,400 square feet in this neighborhood for $325,000, what do you tell them?
Do you agree to lower it if it doesn't sell in the first week?
What would you do? What would you do if your home didn't sell in the time that you have allotted for that? Well, we'd be likely to lower the price, or we'd stand firm on it through the entire listing. We're not budging. We want to see if we can get the price from a crazy cash buyer in California or Dallas. And if we can, we can. And if we can't, we won't. That's how you deal with that. And if that lines up with what you want to do for them, then let them know. The comps don't support that. You and I both see that. And if you still want to move forward with the knowledge that I'll get leads off of your sign and we might get a crazy cash buyer, then I'm game. Or I don't have time for that. Let me refer you to Jeff.
That's the house I have under contract.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So if you go through these photos and these prices, help you not be the negotiator at the table trying to get your seller to lower the price. It's just plain as day. It's evident this is how it's going to work. And if it doesn't work like that for you, what are we in for? Would you be likely to lower the price, or would you wait? What would you do? And that's how I do it. And it's worked well. So with these comps in mind, I think I'm just going to turn Howard loose on my computer and bring him up here.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
Wild.
I'm just gonna field some questions for what you guys had.
Okay.
What you do is right there is a lot what we do too. As
Yeah.
far as for in subdivisions.
Come on up here so the microphone catches you a little better, if you don't mind.
So yeah, so for this, we do the, I mean, I do the same kind of stuff when I'm doing subdivision. I pull that information. Now, when for an appraisal, you say it's a little more in depth because we have to prove like our adjustments. So when we do an appraisal, we have a grid in that appraisal, and I won't have a house that's exactly the same square footage, exactly the same amenities, that type of thing. So a neighborhood like this, really the only main adjustment we're going to make is square footage.
Yeah. Everything's cookie cutter.
Everything's cookie cutter, so it's pretty similar. So that's what I call a slam dunk appraisal. I love that one. And it's also got especially with our crazy market where things are being bid up over, I've got data in there that I can show an increase per month or of how it's going up. So when I can do a market, what they call a market change adjustment. And a market change adjustment is just basically an adjustment based on the increasing each month. So I can look at stuff in that neighborhood, or you can look at and see where it was listed and where it sold for over. And a percentage of adjustment it's going up. So you can make that market change adjustment. Usually I look at the whole neighborhood, if it's a bigger neighborhood, and I'll go back a year and start looking month by month and see how it's increasing. So sometimes, that's where you get, sometimes you have issues where it won't appraise because you had it listed at this, but you guys had 5 offers that were, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 over the asking price. So that's where we can kind of make up a difference on that, because you can look at that market change adjustment there. It doesn't always stay at the same increase that the market's doing, because we have to use data in the past. So we try to use the most recent data possible. So I want sales that happened last week that I can find. Does anybody, that's a great way to look at sales. To look at valuing a neighborhood like that.
Well, one of those houses had carpet in the living room, one had nice floors.
Nice flooring. Really, if we can break it down, and what we try to do is, or I try to do, it depends on the appraiser. So every appraiser is different, but they should be, if I appraise a house, another appraiser appraises a house, we should be within a certain percentage. You gotta look at the market and see if you can break out and see if people are paying extra for that flooring or not. In this market right now, it's hard to tell, because people are just wanting houses and they're paying, so you may not be able to see a difference. And it's so minute that you can't find it. So, but in other, if you got more data, say I've got a neighborhood that's got 30 sales, then I might be able to break it down a little more. And what the best way we try to do our adjustments is what's called paired sales analysis, by finding similar properties and pairing them up and trying to break out the differences. It's in an ideal world you can find all that. I also use a thing called depreciated cost analysis. And so sometimes you have to look at do a depreciated cost and find out what is being paid for certain items, and you get a certain percentage of the depreciated cost of that.
You talking like pools or?
No,
interior,
just
interior?
you can do a square footage adjustment based on those. You can do patio adjustments. You can do fireplace, or because we have to look at, like, if I got a house that's got 3 fireplaces versus a house that's got 1 fireplace, there's a difference there. But there's also the diminishing return too. So one-on-one is the same. So when I'm trying to find comps, I'm trying to find the most similar comps possible, so I don't have to make that adjustment. So like this is great because the only adjustment is square footage. They all had fireplaces. They all had, so I'm not making a
Everybody had granite counter.
Everybody, yeah. So it's great. So, but when we get into properties like you talked about, a 4,000 square foot house on 12 acres, then you get into a lot bigger, different adjustments, because you've got acreage adjustments, you've got size adjustments. You also have differences in fireplaces. You've got differences in amenities. They could have a pool. They could have a barn. They could have so usually, and barns are good ones to use a depreciated cost analysis on, because it's hard
So
to break
explain
those
to
up.
us, because these are the things that we don't know.
Right.
What does a storage building add? How do you value a storage building? How do you value a metal workshop with electricity and a cement pad?
Yeah.
How do you value that with the property?
So, and that's part of our analysis. So whenever I'm looking up comps, I'm looking at sales, I'm trying to find sales that have those items, for one, so I don't have to make that adjustment that much.
Regardless how far away until you find one.
Well, yeah,
Just keep going and going.
yeah, pretty much. I'm going to start close and then circle out, circle
Yeah.
out, circle out.
And same with pools.
Pools, yeah, I've done pools to where, and I hope most people know this, pools don't add cost. So cost does not equate to value. Pools now cost, I know the ones I've seen started like $60,000 or $70,000, but they don't necessarily add that value back in, especially when you sell. And you can break down a neighborhood that has pools and you can figure out, and I haven't done it in a while, but the last one I did came out to be about $8 a square foot.
For the pool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it ranged from 5 to 10. But it's different for every neighborhood, because if you've got neighborhoods that have community pools and you have your own pool, that diminishes a little bit because you've got access to a community pool.
Right.
Some neighborhoods it does. Some neighborhoods, you got these bigger neighborhoods that everybody has a pool.
Right.
So it does add value to there, but it doesn't usually add cost. And that's where you can look and see, at $10 a foot, if you got a 3,000 square foot house, it may add $30,000, or it may add, I've seen them anywhere from, 15 to 30. But that's where we have to break down and do the analysis in the neighborhood.
You're seeing on the regular, a pool will add 5 to 10.
Yeah,
per square
around 5 to
foot.
10.
Okay.
Yeah, in that area. Like I said, it's been a little bit since I've done research, and what I'm trying to do usually is to make it easier on me. I'm trying to find houses that already have pools.
Mhm.
Because if I get a house that's got a pool to comp, I don't have to make that adjustment.
Right.
It's apples to apples. Depreciated cost analysis is really good for buildings. I know that, shop buildings can cost anywhere from $25 to $50 a square foot, depending on what you got into it, right? So we can look at the age of the building and develop a depreciated cost analysis to get to that value. Now, I know there are some appraisers that will just say, yeah, it's worth $10 a foot, which is crazy, because I did an appraisal on a property where a guy had a red iron shop that was 50 by 100, and the guy gave him $25,000, and it was a $200,000 brand new building. And you got to use some common sense on some stuff. If it's that nice a building and it's insulated and it's not just worth 20 grand.
Yeah.
So that's where it gets difficult, is the adjustments, especially in the bigger homes with acreage. And when you do the bigger homes with acreage, you're kind of doing almost two appraisals, because you're looking at land too. So,
And we break, our system is to find land first that matches that acreage, and then look for houses, and then you can subtract that acreage from any of those house comps to only have the house value, and go from there. So that's a much cleaner way to approach it than find something sort of like it.
yeah, what I do on acreage properties, I'm gonna try to find, if I've got 40 acres, I'm trying to find properties as similar as that, or I'm trying to bracket it.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna try to find something like with 30, 35 acres, with something with 50, 55 acres to bracket that. And then then what I do is I break out the land value, because we have to do land value separately anyway. So I go find land sales that are as similar as possible to in location. Hopefully I find something on the same road, or something in the same general area.
Do you look farther back for land sales compared to home sales in neighborhoods?
If I have to, I don't want to, because then I gotta look at, then I'm gonna have to look at doing, especially in this market, I gotta look at doing a market change adjustment too, because I gotta see how much is it increased in last year. So if I can find something within the last, hopefully 2 to 3 months, I'll go back as far as a year on a lot of stuff, just to find something in a similar location, and then I can develop that market change adjustment. But I want to try to find something as close as possible, and that's where it differs from an appraisal standpoint. So when I'm finding comps, not my comps aren't necessarily, especially with a 40-acre parcel, aren't going to be next door or within 5 miles. So then I've got to start looking for more land sale comps, because I need to know the difference in location for that acreage adjustment, because this may be selling for 10 an acre, this may be selling for 15 an acre. And I got to look and see what the difference is, because there's also, when you get into 50-acre parcels or 100-acre parcels, you get less per acre versus 5 acres or 1 acre. There's a big difference between 1 acre and 5 acres on a price per acre. So you got to break all that down too, and figure out what that adjustment's going to be for your property. And it's probably more than you guys need to get into, because it does get difficult. And there's some things that, just like we're talking about adding value. I just did a property it was a smaller property that had a huge solar panel system on it in a neighborhood like this, but older. And it was overkill. It was a huge overkill. I mean, it was probably a 10-year-old system, and it was a $70,000 system they put on a 1,300 square foot house. And and nothing against, I'm an agent too. I got my agent's license, but I tell people I'm a bad realtor or real estate agent, because I'm an appraiser. Because I don't have time, as busy as we are doing appraisal stuff, I don't have time to give the clients and do stuff. And so I do most stuff for myself, or friends or family. And so, because I just don't, it takes a little. I found out I've been appraising for a little over 20 years, and I got my agent's license last year, and I found out that it's a little bit different. There's a lot more time that has to be involved. it's a job, yeah. And I office with a real estate agency, so I was easy just to put my license with them.
Yeah,
Our office is on North Walton,
okay.
so, but it's different, and I've got respect for both sides, because it's hard.
It is.
It's not, I thought, well, maybe I can do this and do both. I'm like, no, after about a year, I'm like, no, I can't. It's too hard to do both.
So when you are trying to find the comps, and you're struggling with that, my training has told me that that's a 20% maximum range in size and age and things like that. You really don't want to go over 20%. You want to keep it well under that if possible.
You want to keep it as close as possible. If it's a neighborhood that doesn't have a lot of sales, and because I've done neighborhoods where you have that odd big house in the small neighborhood, and if it's sold, I will keep it as just an indication of the neighborhood, but knowing that it's much larger, so there's something it's gonna be different. Because you could have I've seen properties that are 1,500 square feet bigger than most of the neighborhood is, but it's sold. Well, it's like, okay, well, that's an indicator, but I'm gonna go find similar surrounding neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get blowback from underwriters and reviewers that if we have all of our sales in the same neighborhood, they want to sell from outside the neighborhood.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Or if it's all from the same builder, because they want to know, well, we want to know that the builder's not overinflating the neighborhood on his own because he's building everything in the neighborhood. So sometimes you get blowback for that. They want to know, because I'll do some new subdivision stuff and I'll have sales because that builder is the main builder in there, and I'll have 6 sales from the same guy. And they're like, well, can you find one outside the neighborhood or one in the neighborhood from a different builder? Because they want to make sure something funny is not going on and he's not dictating the market.
Like Zillow tried to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always tell people don't trust Zillow.
Yeah. Well, they were buying houses like crazy, and then the last couple they would buy them super high and pay cash, and then try to flip the rest of them for the new comps.
Yeah.
Just
going back to that solar panel system, I did, that's where I do want to try to find paired sales or try to find a sale in the neighborhood. I had one sale in that neighborhood that had solar panels, and it showed no value difference.
Yeah.
But one sale isn't really the best indicator. You want to find multiple sales. But that was the only other house in the neighborhood that had solar panels. And in this area, solar panels, they can be good, but they don't necessarily, they don't. I actually sat down with Shine Solar a few years back because they were asking me about, well, can you tell me how much it adds value? I said, well, if you give me all your past stuff and we do a big, we do a lot of analysis on it, we can figure it out. But I said, you may not like what I come up with. So because it probably is going to show it's a lot less than what you guys are charging people.
Yeah.
And because it can typically take 12 to 15 years to recoup your money back. You're basically trading out your electric bill for your payment for solar panels for the next 12, 15 years. And how many people
move twice in 15 years.
How many people still stay in their house? And I always tell people, I said the next people who really come out on that is the second buyer, because they're getting it for a deal.
Yeah.
This house, I can't believe that they can't have electric bill. They have panels on the front, the back, and an array in the backyard.
Lord, they were selling that back.
Yeah. And it was, and there's also, if you ever get solar panels, try to get as much information, the original information on the solar panels as you can get. Because I was trying to get this on this property, because there is it's kind of a discounted cash flow analysis you can do on the size and the wattage, and based on the local energy rates, that you can develop a value based on that. It's not the best. Right now I say there's 2 ways to do it. There's paired sales and there's this way. And there's a thing called PV value you can go look at. And they've got you can plug in this information and it'll help you develop that. But this one, they didn't have any information on. Didn't know when it was built, didn't have the wattage, didn't have any of the information on. So it's like, that doesn't help me. If I don't have that information, I can't develop a value based on that. So yeah.
So one of the things that is always the challenge is Bella Vista properties, because you have the below grade value versus the above grade value.
Yeah.
So in your analysis, I know sometimes it's harder to find comparables, in the right range to be able to do that. Because, you know, you can have a house that's, you know, 2,000 square feet above grade, and then you have a house with a finished out basement that has 2,500 square feet, but the price per square foot is completely different. So can you like explain that just a little bit? Because I think it's a challenge for all of us trying to accurately price a Bella Vista property.
Right. So are you talking about
lake?
Or a lake property.
Are you talking about how you count that square footage, or just how it's, because I know this is an argument between appraisers even.
Mhm.
And I've always counted that lower level daylight basement, like we used to call Bella Vista basements,
Mhm.
as the same as if it's a second story.
Really?
Yeah, because the way it's been marketed on the MLS, when you guys put it on there, if it's 2,000 here, 2,000 here, you'll see most of your buyers or your sellers are seeing it as 4,000 square feet, because it's finished out. As long as it's finished out to the same quality level as the top level, and you have windows and an exterior access. Now, if it's fully below grade, then it's a little gray area. It still has value. It's not that it doesn't have value, it's just different. But there's not a lot of true basements in this area. I've only appraised a handful of actual basement properties. But to me, the market dictates that. And the way most realtors, I would say 99% of realtors, they dictate that on the MLS when people are looking for properties or on Zillow, because it says it's a 4,000 square foot house, it's all finished off. I know it costs a little less to build out a basement, but it adds value. Now, appraisers sometimes will get stuck into Fannie Mae guidelines, what they used to be to make certain guidelines, but Fannie Mae doesn't dictate our market. I mean, market's dictated by people who are buying and selling.
Right.
And so if that's what they're paying for that property, that's what it is. Now,
So find comps with other walkout basements and you're solid.
yeah.
Yeah.
Try to find comps with walkout basements or one levels or 2-story or to that effect. Because I count it similar to that, because that's what the market dictates. I do a lot of relocation work too, and up north basements are not included in GLA. Some appraisers around here don't include it. They break it out, and the biggest problem is that it makes it very hard to accurately define, because it's not always broken out accurately in the. When I find a comp, I don't get to measure it. I have to go based on county records or MLS, and most MLS is county records. And the county records don't always give you the basement finished square footage. So I'm going to try to find the closest I can to the finished square footage, and as long as it's finished out to the same quality level. ANSI standards for measuring is a little bit hazy on it, because if it's 50% above grade, below grade finished, there's kind of a gray area there. They make an exception for it, but I want to look at what the market dictates, and I've had to go back and forth with reviewers and underwriters, and like when we do relocation appraisals, usually there's 2 appraisers that do an appraisal on the same house, and it goes to a reviewer, and they'll say, well, why didn't you break it out as a basement? And I've got a 1-page long addendum in my report stating why, and that the market dictates this, and I can go out there and pull, I don't know how many different MLS sheets that show it's not broken out. That's not how the market dictates it. Now, sometimes for continuity, I can break it out, and I'll break it out, but I'll make a big explanation saying it's not typically broken out in our market, but I'm just reporting it differently in my report. So I'm giving it's got the same value. It's just being reported differently, and this is how it's reported. But
go ahead. I'm sorry. Can you tell us about the converted attic and the height angles? That's a good one.
So it has to be at least 5 feet at where the peak hits the wall. Anything below that, we can't count. And the overall has to be at least 7. Okay. So if it averages out, it has to average out to 7. So if you're walking up there and it's right here, and it's not an overall average of 7 feet, you can't count it. Okay. Because it's not considered usable space. Right. If you can't stand up in it and reasonably stand up in it, so that's an ANSI standard is an average of 7 feet, and the sidewalls have to be 5. So anything.
Is that an Arkansas thing or a nationwide?
ANSI is a nationwide thing. So it hasn't been a set rule, but ANSI is the only standard nationally, locally, anywhere that's a standard for measuring houses.
And it was adopted long ago by the Appraisal Institute and by the National Association of Realtors, by the national, I don't know what the national construction, it's in there, it's been adopted a long time ago, but it's never been enforced. Now, Arkansas, for appraisal standards, they recommend it. It wasn't enforced, but it'll start for Fannie Mae stuff starting here in the next month or two. It's going to be a standard for appraisers.
I had a house in Goshen. They asked me to come out and give a value on, and I got there, and the husband and wife were both 5 feet and under. They were short. He built the house.
I know.
6 foot
Hobbit
ceilings.
house.
6 foot ceilings.
Really?
He's like, I built it for us.
That's the problem. Yeah. so-
And I was like,
Still
I
gonna be
have
yours.
no idea what to do. I have no idea what to do. None.
So throughout the house, it
Without
was
getting
6
in
foot.
trouble.
Yeah, throughout the house. it was 6 foot.
Yeah, I mean, technically, that's a hard one because that's a tough one.
That's a tear down.
That's a huge functional obsolescence. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Better go to the circus. with some
unless
flyers.
you can find somebody, small people who
Yeah.
want to buy the house. That's a real
But
problem.
then how do they get a loan on it?
Yeah, I don't know because it doesn't
Yeah.
count as square. I mean, from an appraisal standpoint, if it's 6 feet, I can't count it.
Yeah.
That's
And they asked me more than once, like they kept asking me to come back and help them. And I'm like,
yeah. That's one where as an appraiser, that's when you might hire an appraiser to say, can you just tell them that?
Can you just tell them, get them off of me?
They'll get mad at me and then they'll stay away
Yeah.
from me.
Yeah,
So,
that's my friend.
yeah, and that's where that's where that comes in, just to tell them that it won't, there's no way to comp that out. There's no
Yeah.
way to count that as square footage because
Just can't.
it's just not, it doesn't meet standards. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
That's a tough one. So, and I always tell people too, value is different. A big thing, and it's like in any field. You've got really good realtors, you got really bad realtors. You've got really good appraisers, you got really bad appraisers. Some guys I call form fillers. They know how to do a cookie cutter house. They'll punch a bunch of them out and do them like that. But they can't do a property that's got any kind of hiccups with it because they don't know how to do the analysis or how to break it out. There's different ways to develop adjustments, and that's where we have to. That's probably the hardest part of our job is, besides finding the right sales, is adjustments, because we have to back those up, and we're supposed to be able to back those up. And you can do, like I said, depreciated cost analysis. You can do regression analysis. You can do, but for years it used to be just like people, they were taught a square foot adjustment by their trainee or their trainer that square foot adjustment was $25. And you kept it for years and they didn't know why they were using it. I'm serious, it happens a lot. And I'm like, and you tell people, well, it's not 25, because I mean, you look at what it costs minus all this other stuff, it's more than 25, You have a, why is it, but, and that's another thing. So square footage adjustments are different. So if you ever look at a report, and because you can see like in that neighborhood, the average price per square foot was $180 a square foot, or 183. When we do square footage adjustments, we're not taking that price per square foot and adjusting that for square footage. When we do adjust for square footage, we're adjusting just for the house. We're taking out pools, amenities, land, stuff like that. So that adjustment's not going to be 180, it may be $100 a foot. It may be $85 a foot. So it's just taking the square footage of the structure. Because we're already doing land adjustments, and that's already included in there. And stuff like that. So that's, people sometimes look at, well, why aren't you adjusting it for, everything neighbors are going for $180 a foot? Well, that's not how that adjustment works.
So talk to us about luxury property, because we're seeing more and more.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what people are buying now.
Mhm.
We're selling more and more of that.
Yeah.
How do we make those adjustments in pricing and in representing buyers and sellers the right way when they say, we brought this wood back from Normandy and made a support beam out of it, because that's freaking amazing.
It is.
That came out of a cathedral in Normandy. What do we do then?
Then you have to say, that's where I tell people cost does not equate to value. We're going to look at the market.
Okay.
And we're going to look at the most similar properties we can find to yours, because when I when I do a luxury house, you can't break everything down to every minute item. It just doesn't work that way. That's where, if I'm doing a $2 million house, hopefully, my comps are gonna have similar quality construction. Just because this one may have Amish beams, this one may have a beam from Normandy,
Mhm.
doesn't mean there's people, the market's gonna go, oh yeah, I know that's gonna be $5,000 difference, per foot or whatever in.
That may create saleability, but not value.
It's a marketable. It's
Yeah.
very marketable. You can do that, but it doesn't necessarily create value. Because you're, especially when you get into that market, you're still comparing it to other properties. You're gonna have, it has to be within that bracketed within that range of that. And I had a friend who was a builder, and it was years ago. He asked me, he used to build in Bella Vista, and he was building, he's a custom home builder, and he was building for a lady out of Dallas in Bella Vista. And he asked me, he goes, why aren't my houses appraising out for what I'm charging these people? I said, well, let's go through it. And I said, we know Bella Vista. I said, you grew up here too. I said, what you pay for the lot? She goes, 60,000. I said, is it on the lake? This was 10 years ago. And she goes, no, it was across the street. I said, well, for one, she overpaid for a lot.
Yeah.
I said, what are you doing in the house? It's a custom house. What are some stuff that are items you're putting in the house? She goes, well, she did heated towel racks. I said, well, how much it does cost? He goes, $1,500 a piece. I said, if you're buying this house or you're building this house for yourself, are you going to pay $1,500 for towel racks? He goes, no. I said, well, neither will the market.
Yeah.
If you get too personalized, then it's to yourself. It's not going to be an item that brings value.
The best
Some do.
house in the neighborhood is not gonna get its value back. My mom said it best, showing her homes. She looked at this gorgeous house that was just surrounded by redneck heaven. And she said, it's like a gold rings in a pig snout.
Yeah.
And that's, you don't want to be the gold ring in the pig snout.
Yeah.
You don't want to overbuild for the neighbor.
But you do, for luxury houses, you do want to have common amenities. So if you've got Viking appliances or you've got these high-end appliances, you don't want to have GE, regular stainless steel appliances. That's not going to be a similar, you want to have a similar finish and quality. That's where it's, when you're doing your research or you're pulling comps, you want to make sure it is a similar type property. Because there's some big houses out there, but the finish level is not the same as some of these luxury houses are.
What do agents do that frustrates you the most?
I'm gonna say sometimes things take longer than we want them to for appraisal standpoint, like if I'm doing research. And I hate to, I've done it a few times where we've had to push out closing because I'm not finished.
Mhm.
But I've got to be able to back up what I'm saying. Otherwise, that's why I have to carry, insurance.
Mhm.
And so I know you guys have a closing happening and you guys got to get it done. You guys have people who are wanting to move into a house or homeless right then. And I'm doing my best to try to get something done. Also, what I've also noticed, it's not just agents. People think there's a different, if you do a refinance versus a purchase, it's a different value.
Mm.
I've heard that so many times. It's a different appraisal value, and it's not.
Mhm.
So when value is market value.
Mhm.
When we appraise a property for refinance or for a purchase, it should come out the same.
Yeah.
We have a definition of market value that we're valuing the property for, and it's that market value.
Now, I've been doing this for over 18 years.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, not every appraiser thinks that way.
Yeah.
And they are there to provide proof that the contract price will work and that the bank is okay. And they will not go any beyond that, even if they got the brother-in-law deal.
Yeah.
They won't,
Yeah.
because they don't have to.
I've seen that happen before. And that's why I said there's good appraisers and bad appraisers.
Yeah.
And they're not, I like my father-in-law. I learned from my father-in-law. He still works with me.
Mhm.
He does most, we do commercial and residential. I do most of our residential and some small commercial. He does mostly all commercial. He's hitting his 45th year as an appraiser.
Wow.
He's also an MAI and SRA. He's got every
Designation.
designation out there from the Appraisal Institute. He was on the state board, licensing board. He was a president 2 years. He was on the planning commission for the city for 15 years. And he's always, taught me this is a profession. It's not just a fly by night thing. So and you always learn something new every day, because I don't know everything. And appraisals aren't an exact science. So it's my opinion and value based on the best data that I can find. So we've always talked about it's more of a range of value than it is an exact value. For an appraisal report for reporting, we have to give you an exact value. But when we come up with our values, we usually have a range. So that's why we pull sales. We have, 3 to 6 sales, or sometimes we'll have 12 sales, sometimes we'll have, whatever, but you have a range of value. You should be pretty tight within that range.
On your, on that last question, same one, different vein, what can we do that helps you the most, that you like the most? Leave you alone?
No. It depends on the appraiser. I like data, so I'm a data guy.
Yeah.
If you've got data in the neighborhood, give it to me. If this is stuff that, if you know something else about the property that I don't know, let me know. Some appraisers are kind of standoffish. I'm sure you come across them. They don't like, I know what I'm doing, don't leave me alone. I'm different. I like to know as much data as possible, as much information as possible, so I can make the best decision possible.
So MLS attachments would help a lot.
Oh yeah, I check MLS attachments all the time. I check for surveys. I check for old appraisals to see if they've got a sketch.
Amenities.
I check amenities lists. I check all that stuff if I can find it. And then sometimes I'll call up a realtor and say, hey, what, because we have to, were there concessions? Was there any personal property included? Because personal property can't be included in the value because we have to separate that out. Or we don't separate it out. We have to just make a note and say, well, there was a boat included, just so you know. So, and stuff like that. But I like a lot of information. So, and just do your research. I did a property that, have you guys ever talked about highest and best use of the property? Sure. So try to know the highest and best use. I did a duplex in Bentonville. That was also, it was, the request was sent as a duplex, but the property was split up as individual townhouses. You could have done it either way. And usually if you split it up, it's going to bring more value. When I did, and this was back a little over a year ago, so the market was going well, and it was tough for duplexes because things were increasing and stuff. And so I was doing this appraisal, and I'm bringing it market. My value is coming in at about 50,000 less than what the contract was. And I called up the realtor. And I said, did you ever look at pricing this as a townhouse? I said, if you guys would have done this individually, split up, I don't think you'd be having a problem right now.
But so if they have separate parcels,
it was separated out. I said because you're going to get more per square foot selling as 2 individual units. And I said right now, I have to look at duplex sales. I can't. This was asked to me to do as a duplex, multifamily duplex, and so I've got to compare apples to apples. And duplex sales aren't anywhere near this. And we have to look in for multifamily stuff, for income producing properties. We have to look at income. So I really highly rely on what the income is going to bring out the value to be, because it's an investment property, or typically, and you have to see what that income is bringing in to see what the value is going to be based on that income.
So appraisers look at replacement cost as one way to find value, comparable sales, and then income. Those are the 3 methods. And on commercial, it's almost always on commercial residential, like multiplexes, it's almost always.
We try to do both as much as possible, but income is going to be your biggest indicator of value, because you're looking at your buyer. Who's your buyer for most of these big multifamily? They're investors.
People want to make money off.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's where highest and best use comes into account. Is like, what's the highest and best use of this property? And that's for, like, if you look at downtown Bentonville right now, downtown's I was born and raised here, I grew up here.
Yeah.
And you got to look at these little houses downtown, and what is the highest and best use? I mean, if it's selling, is it just a land value to be used as a use for a bigger house, or for multifamily properties, because the cost of the land is so much, where the house may not just have any value at all. You got to look at where it gets to a point where a house has no value, even though there's improvements there and they're livable.
Yeah.
They don't have value because the land has gone up so much. And you've got to, and so if it's done that, you gotta say, well, even if that house was totally remodeled, it still has no value because it's got a higher and best use. When we look at a property when we look at appraising a property, we're supposed to look at it from the standpoint of the highest and best use as vacant and the highest and best use as improved. So
I'm going to open this up to Fayetteville. Any questions from the Fayetteville office? Sound.
it's okay. And if also for measuring, if I always tell people to be aware, most of the county records are pretty good on subdivisions, cookie cutter subdivisions. But I've seen them be off as much as 1,000 square feet too on some properties. So just be careful on those because it can be. I did a house, and we don't typically do drive-by appraisals, and they're getting, that's another thing that's starting to come out, which we won't do. But they're called bifurcated appraisals, where they send out a third-party person to do an inspection and gather the data and then send it to an appraiser to do an appraisal. And it's too much liability for me.
Yeah.
Because I can't verify, and I don't know how if they know. I've been measuring houses for 20 years and I know how to measure a house now.
Yeah.
And so I can't, to me, I don't know too much of a control freak or whatever, but I can't trust with their square footage. But just be careful on that stuff, because like I said, I've done a house. I did one 12 years ago where the bank was like, well, we're just doing a home equity line. We know it's worth whatever they're pulling out. We just need a quick, simple. We said for this one, they were a good client. We said for this one, we'll do it. We'll do it based on the county records. And the only other time I do that is on drive-bys is for foreclosures when you can't get access because somebody's there and it could be a dangerous situation.
Evan, you have any questions?
Not really. I mean, I've learned several things and had a lot of things reinforced that I think I already somewhat knew. I love the approach about if you see a house that's appreciated from $145 to $190 a square foot over the last 12 months, you look in month by month to see how you get there. Is kind of nice and something that I think I could better help my clients with. But I mean, it's been great, but to be honest with you, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to, because we've covered a lot. So thank you.
Yeah, and I guess another thing to cover is we have a thing called USPAP. I don't know if you've ever heard of USPAP. It's the Uniform Standards of Appraisal Practice.
Oh yeah.
It's our Bible. And it's basically about that thick.
We're not going to read it.
No, please don't. I don't like reading it. And we have to do a class on it every 2 years because it changes every 2 years. They do updates and change things in it. And so we have to do, it's kind of like our code of ethics, but different. It's kind of, it's a big bunch of guidelines that we have to follow. So there's certain things we can't give a lot of information about what we're working on, even the homeowner, because typically they're not our client.
Yeah.
So typically our client's the bank.
Right.
You may be selling a house and I'm doing an appraisal on the house and for your buyer, but it's the bank who's hiring me and I can't give information to that buyer.
Yeah.
That has to come from the bank. I have and have to direct it towards them. So
Carolyn, any questions from you?
Not really. I'm learning a lot. I've been taking notes.
Good. Chelsea?
It's all new.
Yeah.
and there's different types of value too besides market. So like relocation, that's not a market value. We're finding it's called a anticipated sales price because it's all dictated by marketing time. So there's different types of value out there too. There's assemblage value. So that's like you may have a piece next door. So you just got to know what you're valuing the property, your definition of value is too for certain things. 99% of the time it's market. It's not going to be a big deal, but there's also, and we do stuff for estates, for taxes, for IRS, stuff like that. So
Keith?
No, I don't really have any questions. It was good. I'm like Evan, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to the whole thing again, but appreciate this because right now it's getting, clients know a lot and sometimes it's hard having these conversations. So appreciate it.
yeah.
All right.
Appreciate it. No problem,
Thanks for
Gavin.
being
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, thank you.
A benefit to our entire market, helping our agents with that. I appreciate it
If
a
you guys
lot.
need anything, I'm just down the road, so.
You have any cards to leave with
I
us?
didn't bring any
or
cards
anything?
with me.
No?
I wasn't
Okay.
prepared. I wasn't prepared on that. I brought my books, but not the cards.
All right. All right. Anything else to cover from Felicia? Anything to add?
No.
Nope. Malia? Say that
If you
again.
have an RSVP
So
banquet,
you dig into real estate, we have half the office.
So RSVP for the banquet, we are getting our numbers in, and strange enough, the place we're having it wants to know how many people they're feeding. So, yeah, right.
That's rude.
If you'd like to get that in quickly, we need to put a deadline on that, so that we have that. I'll talk to Malia about that, and we'll send out another notice for a deadline. Tana, anything to cover? No? All right. Well, that's our Tuesday meeting, and I appreciate you guys. Have a great one, and we'll have this recorded and posted as soon as possible. Thank you, guys.
I was gonna say, my company